I am Brian.
I am Julius.
This is the Ascendant Project. The mission of the Ascendant Project is to explore the political positions in individuals. A contributor writes a 750-word article and then gets interviewed.
The purpose of the interview is to bring out other views and hopefully life experiences that sent the author down the path to the position expressed.
Although some debate will undoubtedly occur, this is not intended to be a forum for debate, but rather a project to better explore the individual and the American experience as a whole.
All opinions and views expressed, written or verbal, are solely the ownership of the one who expressed them. The Ascendant Project does not hold or endorse any views or opinions.
What is Truth? By Brian Smyers. When I was young and in college, I was part of a Bible study called The Search for Truth. The series started with a friend of mine, Kelly, reading John 18:36-38, which occurs during Jesus' trial in front of Pontius Pilate. Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into this world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." "What is truth?" retorted Pilate. With this, he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him." When I was part of this study in my time growing up in the church, I thought this was a deep question going to the core of communication, philosophy, politics, and theology. Now that I am older, I am more of the mindset to where I hear, what is truth to a man who rules instead of governs? Is truth even relevant to your position when your position is to do whatever it takes to keep power? These questions make one more skeptical of things a president says or his press secretary may say, as well as being more cynical of government as a whole. But that said, what are we going to do? Give up trying to make the world better? Are we just going to let those with power, resources, capital, and the money of small countries shape the world to be better for them and not work for millions of our fellow citizens? Our media is very segregated. Fox says one thing, MSNBC says another. There are decisions to be made in what to cover and how to cover it. Does it fit a greater narrative? It is natural for one side to have a skewed narrative that there will be a reaction from the other side to counter that narrative. As a result, common people listen to sources that are comfortable to them and their political beliefs. My echo chamber averages to the left. It's Morning Joe before work, MSNBC between service calls in my car. I subscribe to The Atlantic. Wall Street Journal and Washington Post, I read them. I do miss listening to NPR, and I need to make an effort to listen to that instead of MSNBC while in my car. Contrary to some opinions, NPR is actually pretty down the center in terms of reporting. That said, I would like the listener to ask themselves, how does one discern what is true? One way I have found is to listen to what attorneys say in court, even in cases that are lost. They are not allowed to lie to the court. Attorneys risk being disbarred if they do. During the 2020 election, there was a huge gap on what Trump's attorneys would say on TV and what they said in court. As a result, Trump lost 60-plus court cases, most of them for lack of legal standing. The one case they won was about how close observers could get to the vote counters. But people listen to TV more than they listen to court cases, and this lack of public discernment led directly to January 6th. It is important for the public to verify stories they hear, and we all fall victim to believing false information from time to time. I recently posted on my Facebook about a story that occurred in 2017 thinking it was current. I was, of course, called out for it by a conservative friend of mine, which leads me to my next point. It is important to have friends across the political aisle. Your relations with them need to be good enough to where they can call you out on your bullshit. Those who share your echo chamber do not have the capacity to do so. The reason this is simple. If you share similar echo chambers, whatever you say is going to sound right to them, whether the story is true or not. Finally, we need to make a commitment to be well informed. I rely on Rupert Murdoch's News Corps, which owns the Wall Street Journal, to balance out my biases. Although their opinion pages sometimes make me scream, I find their reporting to be both in-depth and accurate. I also try to use sources that are not afraid to issue corrections. Corrections are important because they testify to both the humanity of the journalists and the integrity of their journalistic standards. Any site that does not issue corrections demonstrates they do not care about truth or integrity. Rather, they are only concerned about agenda. Unfortunately, we do not live at a time where press time is a thing. When we relied primarily on newspapers, a set press time would help give reporters time to break through the fog of war and find the facts of a breaking story. Now, with the advent of the internet, the 24-hour news cycle, being first is usually valued higher than being right. Turning off the TV and reading a newspaper, online or a physical copy at a specific time, may help you in your search for truth, as well as lower your stress levels. Ding, ding. Let me mute that. There we go. Ding, ding. Just before we get started, Julius.
Okay.
I blame you for last night.
For
and
last
Dan.
Night? What? Why? For
you
the
did
loss?
not wear the jerseys.
Oh, whatever.
Capitals lost. You came to the bar. It's the playoffs, and you did not wear your jerseys.
Well,
you're the reason why.
Here we are about to discuss your essay, What is Truth? And we're going to start off with a superstition.
Oh, totally. 100%. It kind of goes to the heart of the article, don't you think?
That depends on how you answer the question. What is truth?
And you and Kristen obey the power play rules.
Well, okay.
Yeah, come on. How are we supposed to summon the hockey gods? Anyway. All right, go ahead.
All right, Brian. How are you?
I am well.
Good. Go ahead and why don't you start by summarizing your article?
All right, so my article basically uses a passage from the Bible where Jesus is on trial and Pontius Pilate asks, what is truth? Which, growing up, I kind of felt he was asking Jesus that question. But now that I'm older and I see how political power works, I kind of view it as more rhetorical. And and I feel that it begs a question to where when I was young, I felt what is truth, what's communication and religion and philosophy. But now I feel that it's more what is truth to a person in power who wants to maintain their power.
Gotcha.
It's a totally different question. So it kind of re-examines that. It's like not that he'll ever hear this podcast, but it's kind of a retort almost 30 years later to that series and turns it on its head.
Gotcha. Okay. What was your inspiration for writing this? Like, what were you thinking about? What event prompted you to?
Oh, geez. This was just yesterday too. This one was written in a hurry. I'm not 100% certain.
You don't remember what you were doing?
That Capitals playoff loss just was so devastating. It took it out of my brain.
Yeah.
because
It
somebody
was a
didn't
kind
wear
of
his jersey.
devastating loss. Yeah. You jerk.
So yeah, but I mean, I was probably listening to something on the radio or something, and it had occurred to me, that along with our previous perspectives on that we had expressed in our previous articles and interviews, that it's very hard to discern. And maybe, I mean, this is the Ascended Project seems to be going underneath the surface of politics. Don't necessarily go straight after the issues straight up. I mean, we have yet to write an essay on immigration or anything like that.
Right.
But rather we kind of have been like, this whole series been returning to the fundamentals of reason and the fundamentals of how worldviews are created, like within ourselves and how we look at the world.
Yeah.
And so, I take a look at our friends and they're very passionate on the other side of the aisle. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I look at them like they're crazy. But at the same point in time, we have completely different views on what the truth is when it comes to politics.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, I understand that. Yeah, and I would agree too that our whole series so far has really kind of been like getting back to basics almost, and getting down to the fundamentals of how we just talk to each other and how we collectively make decisions together. How we consume information and then decide ultimately what direction to take the country in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll admit I'm not the most familiar with this exact passage, but like I totally appreciate how your understanding of something you read, especially from the Bible, when you're younger, or maybe it's just the context of the day or whatever, and how that can kind of like change over time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was the impetus for that? Like, how did that happen for you in this particular case?
Well, I think in this case, it's just because I had heard something and it occurred to me, just for instance, I mean, dealing with Trump and how he puts things out. Like recently, there's been court cases like the Abrego Garcia case to where they've admitted that they picked him up in error,
right?
But they don't care,
right?
And so this man's rotting in Ecuadorian prison, and they're like,
or is it El Salvadorian?
I mean, sorry, El Salvadorian prison. My bad, wrongy. There aren't that many countries that start with the letter E, especially in Central America. You chose the wrong one, Brian. Yeah, in an El Salvadorian prison, and by the way, and that's because of a financial contract, and Trump's like, it's a foreign policy issue. I can't do anything about it.
Right.
Like he doesn't
just
care
stop
about
paying
the
the
truth.
money.
Yeah. He doesn't care about the truth whatsoever. He doesn't care about the integrity of the situation. He just wants them gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of dovetail with another idea I've had for an article, which I might write down the road, about putting loyalty in front of ethics.
Yeah, you've mentioned that a
few
a
times,
lot.
and I feel like that there's definitely
one
needs
you
to
gotta
be an article on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. But like thinking about like maybe that particular instance, when you say what is truth, relating Pontius Pilate's statement to this particular instance, like how do you make the connection? Like what?
Well, Pontius Pilate was
what's the analog?
Pontius Pilate was actually historically a pretty ruthless ruler, and he's usually portrayed being a good guy in the Bible, but historically he's really not. And so if I look at this verse through a historical lens, what is truth? All he's really concerned about is Jesus a threat to his power? That's all he's concerned with. He's not concerned with anything about him other than that. I look at this passage now that Pilate is actually just writing him off as a crazy man. Like, not my problem. He hasn't committed any crimes.
And
he
so
says he's the king of someplace else. That's fine with me.
So
spiritual realm, no threat to me. I don't care.
Right. So do you view like Trump as being, being of that same mindset? Like, what is truth? What power do these other people have over me to, in this example, like bring Abrego Garcia home.
Yeah. I mean, he defies court cases. And when you take a look at January 6th, like later on in the article, I bring up, what is said in court is different than what's said on TV.
Mm-hmm.
I think Giuliani lost his law license because of this, for this exact thing, because he cannot lie in court, and Giuliani did. And so he got disbarred.
Right.
And so you had all these talking points on Fox News about the elections being stolen and voting machines changing votes. But the moment they get to court, they said none of those things, because they knew they could not, because there would be repercussions.
Yeah.
So the truth mattered in court, but it didn't matter on TV.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to agree with you on that point that, if you listen to the statements made in court and how they differ from the statements that people make in public, you really get a lot of insight into how the narrative is being manipulated
Yeah. I have a like C-SPAN radio app on my phone, and I get alerts like when the Supreme Court arguments are starting, and if I can, I always listen to them.
Yeah, they're great. Honestly.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
You really want to get to the nitty gritty of a question?
Yeah,
listen to those arguments, and they're actually kind of entertaining too.
They can be.
They
can be if you like. I'll admit, like if you're not ready for that level of dissection, and then when you tune in, you're gonna like it's just gonna your brain will just start to hurt after 5 minutes. But once you kind of like get into it, if you've like experienced a few of them, then absolutely,
yeah. I mean, it's like,
and nuance absolutely matters. I think that's another thing that's kind of like lost. Is getting into the nuance of a situation, but and that's something the Supreme Court seems to try to do really well.
Like for instance, when Trump's attorneys were asked if Trump ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, since it's an official act, would he have to be impeached before he's prosecuted? Like impeached and convicted in the Senate before he can be prosecuted in the Justice Department. The fact that a Supreme Court justice asked that, and then listening to the attorney response saying that's the way it had to be, I think I miffed that a little bit. But
no,
I mean I miffed the question. I think the response was he had to be impeached first.
Yeah, essentially, I think that it was.
But I was yelling at the radio and my jaw was like completely dropped. It was like one of those moments like, did I just hear Trump's attorney actually say that? And it brings a whole new dimension to everything if you can actually hear the court cases. I mean, if I had like 3 months leave, I'd probably take a month of it just sitting in the Supreme Court, sitting in the back.
Yeah. I think though too, like this is something that this is very much the reason, and if you go back through some of my essays, this is very much the reason why I say, as an American in America, the fight is never over. The discussion is never done. There's always more to do. The Constitution is not complete. And that particular example, I think, kind of epitomizes it for me. That here was this guy saying, the Constitution allows for the House and the Senate to impose sanctions or punishments on the executive, on the president specifically, by impeachment. And he was right in that argument. Mm-hmm. But I take that as there's nothing in the Constitution as it currently has been written for us, the people, to be able to hold a president accountable. So where's the amendment?
Yeah.
Like we have a process. We need to follow that. I know it'll take a while. I mean, as we talked about, my first essay, I think, the last amendment to be passed took 200 years.
Yeah, it did.
To be passed. And if that's how long it takes, then that's just, we need to put in the work.
Put forth like during the Bill of Rights.
Yep.
And then it finally got ratified.
Finally,
1997 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but if we're not putting in the work, then these are the repercussions.
Yeah.
I bet you could rattle off like 3 other passages from the Bible that might be relevant to.
I could. I don't want to necessarily. I mean, I have no problems like bringing up Bible verses because, that's my background and there's a good chunk of me that, feels very strongly about it. But this podcast is for everyone and I don't necessarily want to drive people away.
That's fine.
What
about outside of the Bible or any like books that you could look to that you could quote or, that might have helped to inform this position?
There's actually a very small book called On Tyranny.
On Tyranny? I think I'm familiar with this, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's just, it came out, I think, like 10 years ago, but it recently hit popularity. But really, when it comes down to it, the best political book I think I've ever had, and I've actually bought this book for friends and people in my life to spread it around. It was Love Your Enemies by Arthur C. Clarke. And what that is it deals with, it's basically a book about productive political dialogue and how important it is to love the people on the opposite side of the aisle and respect them. And I loved how it started off. It actually started off, I think it was like a rally on the mall, like after Trump's first inauguration or whatnot, or something like that. And a leader of Black Lives Matter was there. And these MAGA people, were having this great rally and one of the MAGA leaders, recognized him for who he is and actually invited him up on stage. And the crowd hated it, absolutely hated it. But, he got booed or whatnot. But he also won a few people over in the crowd. But because he stated his position and, why Black Lives Matter was so important. And like a lot of MAGA hat wearing people came up to him afterwards and like they admired his courage and they thought they complimented him on how he handled the situation. Although he might not have like moved the political needle with anybody in that crowd, he did move the needle in terms of respect. That's always a precursor to changing somebody's mind. You're never going to change anybody's mind if you don't have their respect.
Yeah.
So there are certain rules with political conversations. The moment that an insult is uttered or more importantly perceived, the conversation's over.
Right.
It's just going to go downhill from there.
Yeah.
So
once you engage that fight or flight response, all reason is gone.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. What is your perspective on that statement? What is truth? Do you think?
Well, okay. So this was the
point of the article?
No.
Okay.
This was the Pixie Stick Bible study.
Stick?
Where I proved absolute truth on two 3-foot pixie sticks and a 32-ounce IBC root beer.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Your sugar-induced...
Yes, my hallucination.
Hallucination, right?
Yes. Yeah. And in that I had decided that there has to be absolute truth because there's communication. If there can't be communication without meaning, and there can't really be meaning without truth. So therefore, the fact that you and I are having a conversation means there is absolute truth out there. That was the result of 2 3-foot pixie sticks and a 32-ounce IBC.
Fair enough. Okay. So, all right.
I felt good about them.
Yeah. I feel it's safe to say from the article, but you would disagree with Pontius Pilate's, supposition that the truth of the matter is.
I think the fact that he wasn't, I view it now as a rhetorical question, shows more that he was more concerned about himself than he was concerned about this man's life. Yeah. I mean, I'm in power. What is Jesus to me? He's not claiming to like overthrow my role. He doesn't say say I'm a king of this realm.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay, so from that point in your essay, you say, is it even relevant if your position is to do whatever it takes to keep power? Right?
Yeah, is the truth even relevant if your position is to do whatever it takes?
Yeah.
If you will say anything to stay in power, what's true doesn't matter. I watched a documentary on Roger Stone
Oh, yeah.
And he said he discovered in fourth grade, like he won like class president or something like that by lying to all of his classmates, even though he knew it was completely false, that he could change the lunch menu. And so he became class president in fourth grade, you know, on that platform.
Saying that he was going to, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm remembering that right. Yeah. Get Me Roger Stone is the name of the documentary.
Yeah.
And as we discussed in previous podcasts, I mean, Roger Stone was and Roy Cohn, you know, were very influential in Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's like the parallel, honestly, is like, I don't know how you could miss it.
There are certain things that Roger Stone believes that I also do believe. Like the past is prologue. The what's ever happened before this point in your life is prologue to the present.
Yeah.
And so your story really begins now. And you have to always keep that mindset no matter what point in life you are.
Yeah. The Battlestar Galactica mantra, if you will. All that has happened before will happen
again and again and again. End of line.
End of line.
That was the first hybrid. Nerd.
You were the first hybrid?
Yeah, no, that was the first hybrid. Hybrid that who wound up saying all of that and then said end of line. Yeah, with the old style silence. I think that said that.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So then from that you go into your discussion of, you know, the press and the media and how we determine what is true.
Yeah, because our echo chambers are so strong. And it's you really need to diversify your sources, but you also need to diversify your friends.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't enough to be around a bunch of friends who think alike. You're not going to become a better person by having a homogenous group of friends.
Maybe this will like touch on a sensitive point. We don't have to discuss it if you don't want, but you know, as a business owner, I've you know, but without any like formal business training,
mm-hmm.
I did what any good person would do, and I became an internet expert. So Y Combinator has a really great series, and as part of this series, I think it was Sam Altman who was doing this like 10 years ago. Before now, he's famous for OpenAI, but he was famous back then even for something else. But you know, somebody asks him, it had come up through this series that you want to hire diverse people, and he kind of he's then asked on the last episode, you know, what does diversity mean? You know, so I guess my question to you is the same. Like, is it diversity of background? Is it, you know, ethnical diversity? Is it just diversity of thought? Or like, what do you mean by
yes, all
that?
of the above. Because like a friend of mine from work, Jonathan, I think I brought this up before, but he's an African American, and he was pulled over, I think it was like a block from his mom's in North Carolina, and had to sit in the car for like 4 hours or something like that with his family in his car, explaining to the cop, the white cop, that he's just visiting his mom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he was sitting in the cop's car for that long, separated from his family, who was in his car. Totally different life experience than what I have ever experienced in my lifetime. But without him in my life, I would not know that story. If I don't have that story, it's more likely that, you know, I went to a high school that was 90% white. So without him in my life, there'd be an even greater chance that I would not be able to consider the other side of, say, the Black Lives Matter issue.
Mm-hmm.
Because personal relationships are very important, because with relationships, you have trust. And if you trust their stories, you trust what they say about their experiences, and then those experiences can affect yours. And you do not get that from reading a newspaper.
Oh yeah, I think that
you get that with the empathy and the personal investment in somebody else.
Yeah, I think, and this actually goes to my next question. Yeah, because you discussed both having friends who are on the opposite side of the spectrum politically, and then also talking about the media and having, you know, trying to balance out biases and that kind of thing. Do you have an opinion, or who would you say should rank higher? Why not? Like, is it your friend group that you think you should give more weight to? Yeah.
Ooh.
Maybe not friend. For the benefit of the people listening, we'll just say peer group.
Yeah, peer group.
Yeah.
I mean, your peer group though is still local for the most part. So, I mean, if you really want to understand what's going on around the nation, you really do need to pay attention to news sources. I personally like newspapers more than necessarily cable news, but that doesn't mean I don't listen to cable news.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you do want to know something when it happens, as it happens. I mean, it's this is a horrible example, but like 9/11, if you worked in DC or you worked in New York, there was no way you're going to wait till that evening to find out what happened.
No. Well, it was almost impossible not to find out earlier than that.
Exactly. I mean, I think my dad, it took him like 6 hours or something crazy to get home from NIH in Bethesda, just because 270 was so freaking clogged. And all the roads out were clogged. There's no real, for as much infrastructure as we have around here, we've never really thought of evacuation routes from Washington, D.C. We never built our road system for that.
Right.
We just built our road system to get people to work on a daily basis. Our road system was never set up to get everybody out in a quick and orderly manner.
So who do you go to first when
I wake up in the morning, or
when you read a story, right? Who do you go to first to try and balance out your perspective? Is it your peer group, or is it your?
Well, for instance, another technician of mine during the Baltimore riots, which he calls the Baltimore uprising. It was like brought out about, I think the word thugs became a divisive word there for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And I was kind of taken aback by that because I just thought thug meant criminal. I did not necessarily think that thug meant black. So, he's African American. So I asked him about that. And I got his point of view on that. And he was appreciative that I asked questions as opposed to assume, as opposed to react. So I got his perspective on that. And that's why a diverse peer group is so important, because to be able to challenge your views in a non-threatening way. And that only happens through good relationships. That only happens through trust. By asking questions in a non-threatening way, you're not assuming, and therefore you're not projecting any stereotypes. So you're not putting anybody in a box by asking an actual question, saying, "Hey, look, I've heard this. I've always thought differently. What do you think?" Which, all in all, I think is a much better way to go about politics to begin with than somebody reacting to somebody and spewing off their mouth and then making everybody uncomfortable in the room. Which is what happens 90% of the time.
Yeah.
I've done it. I'm trying to break that habit, but I've done it many times.
Yeah. Well, and this is, I think this is, and kind of going back to your mom's essay, honestly, about, trying to be compassionate and not point fingers. Like we are talking about like very serious issues here, right? Like it's difficult not to be passionate.
Yeah.
But at some point you do have to kind of like temper your passion to be able to make any kind of progress.
Yeah. And my hunch is that, even though you and I are two liberals talking about all of this, I really think a lot of conservatives and even MAGA people, I think they could latch on to what we're saying.
I hope so.
Because this is underneath the politics.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that people on both sides of the aisle understand how much just straight up reaction can ruin things. If the purpose of a story that you read is to get you upset, and then you post that you're upset, well, then you're upset and you're making somebody take a step back right away. It's like Ted Lasso. If you don't own your emotions will own you.
Yep.
So you really need to, it's okay to feel what you feel. And it's okay to acknowledge what you feel, but you have to manage how you express how you feel. So that way you can deal with the topic constructively. Yeah.
Yeah. I gotcha. So you mentioned being. I'm trying to find the part. Huh? This question makes one more skeptical of things a president or press secretary may say, as well as more cynical of government as a whole.
Yeah, like that cynicism and skepticism there, Julius.
I hear you calling me out. So what is the relationship between those two for you? I mean, we didn't get to that in mine because I feel like that was all about me. But
yeah,
like, what is the relationship between skepticism and cynicism for you?
Like I just said, it's important to use a diverse group of peers to allow yourself to ask questions.
Mm-hmm. How do you keep from becoming a cynic?
How do you keep from becoming a cynic? The Adventures of Baron Munchausen was a movie that Robin Williams starred in that he never got any credit for, but it was directed by Terry Gilliam of Monty Python fame. And it was a great, fantastic movie, but the end of it, and this is where this is important, the closing lines was, and everybody who at least had a talent for it lived happily ever after. Not everybody has a talent to be happy, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a shout out to depression. It's just a shout out to life choices and how you view things and what you choose to focus on. For as much as the cynics hate idealism, there has to be an idealistic core for you to believe in that you can make a difference, to believe that you can make yourself a better person, there has to be a belief that the world can be a better place if we do the work. If you don't have that core belief, you're not going to be happy because you don't believe in your fellow man, you don't believe in the world, and you do not believe in yourself. So
I almost wish I had said that instead of whatever bullshit I said.
For the record, I have not had any 3-foot pixie sticks when I said that.
So no hallucinations.
No hallucinations.
Moments
no IBC.
Enlightenment. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 51. I can't do that stuff anymore.
Yeah. Man, I hear you. I did appreciate how you went into your essay talking about, you kind of eventually get into how you evaluate news sources.
Yeah.
Right. So why don't you like talk about that rather than me just reiterating?
How I evaluate news sources is, number one, I hope nobody comes here for news because, number one, we don't do news. No. Number two, we don't have any necessarily journalistic standards, even though we kind of try to.
We try.
We try to have journalistic standards, but we're not trained in it. We're just average, ordinary people. And if you understand, I mean, if you listen to the Hands Off episode, you know how much that we struggle with that. If you listen to that podcast, journalists are human. And so for any place to not issue corrections, I'm talking to you, Breitbart.
Yep.
You're assuming that you don't make mistakes. And that is pretty freaking arrogant, number one. And it shows that you're more about your agenda than you are about the facts. I once got into a debate with a friend of mine because he had posted a Breitbart article about an imam, a Muslim priest, basically, in Arlington. I think it was Arlington, Virginia. I might have the town wrong. But he had done a lot of anti-American sermons. And so Breitbart was freaking out. Washington Post also covered it. So I was like, okay, let's just stay with the story and let's follow it. Let's stay with the story and see what happens with this. Well, a few days later, the Islamic congregation, kicked him out. So he was no longer in charge of the congregation because of these statements. Washington Post covered it. Breitbart did not, because Breitbart's about anti-Islamic sentiment. And so that editorial choice was a decision about agenda. And so I called him out on that. I was like saying, this is why you should not listen to Breitbart. They don't follow the story. This is completely about agenda. They do not follow through with this because the end did not meet what they were trying to express and what they're trying to foster feelings in you. So, it's very important to pay attention to those sort of things, who stays with the story, who does not. Because in the end, that congregation, they're Islamic, but they're Americans and they did the right thing. And Breitbart didn't care.
Yeah. I mean, that's very difficult. I'll I'll admit that I use a lot of news aggregators.
Yeah.
So like Ground News, Straight Arrow News. If any of them want to support the podcast, please reach out. But but it's difficult. I think a lot of people use a lot of those news aggregators, even if they're just going to Fox News.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily, as we got into a little bit with the, when I was talking to your mom, that it's the editorialization is all mixed in with the news. So staying with the story is really hard. Do you have like particular tools or things that you use to make that easier?
No, well, in this case, it was easier because it was a political discussion. So there's kind of a there's a stake in the game, because I was making my point.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's a lot of times, and this is the problem as a whole with life, is that so many things keep happening that it's really hard to stay with something because another story will always just pop up.
Yep.
Sometimes that's intentional, like Trump's executive orders. I mean, I don't know how many he's up to now.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was just like throwing like you read one and then another one come out.
Yeah.
And so before you could really react to anything, you're already 5 executive orders behind.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa. I know I think the term shock and awe was used, which, by the way, he stole from W. North Iraq War. But
I've heard flood the zone.
Flood the zone. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, if you throw enough stuff out there, they can't react to all of it.
Right.
And at least some of it will stick.
Right.
No matter if it's legal or not.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. You also mentioned issuing corrections or retractions.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree that that's important. Being able to do that kind of fact checking and issuing retractions or corrections does come at a cost. So for like some of these smaller, now Breitbart is huge now, I think, but
probably, yeah.
But at one point it was small.
Yeah, when Dan was starting it out.
To what degree can you allow that to happen?
Allow what to happen?
Like to allow a story to go basically just unchecked.
Once again, you're down to trust.
Yeah.
It's very hard. Most people work like 8 to 5 and they commute on top of that. So they're early gone 7 to 6. If you're leaving at 7, you can have breakfast at 6 o'clock a.m. So that means if you're waking up at 6 a.m., if you're lucky enough to commute that close to work.
Right. Yeah. If you're lucky. Yeah.
Which most people in the Maryland area are not.
No. Yeah.
So that means you're going to bed at like 9 o'clock. So you have 2 hours in the day.
Maybe.
For family, for the news, and for everything else. I mean, the pandemic, I think one of the reasons why the Black Lives Matter protests were so huge was because everybody was home.
Yeah.
And they could watch the news.
Yeah.
They could focus on other things.
Mm.
They could have news on in the background if they're remote working or whatnot. You can't do that at work. So I felt like people were more informed during that time.
Mm.
Now that everybody's back at work, we're returning to our normal levels of only being able to have 15 minutes, half an hour a day, if you're lucky, to listen to stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a service technician, so I drive around. So my radio's on, my XM's on usually.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, just gets too upset or whatnot. So you take time away from it. And that lessens how informed you are still too, even though you need to be happy about, things. So sometimes you want to listen to music instead of news.
Right.
Or news opinion.
How about this? What is your opinion of the more recent development? All of the social media, all of the major social media companies seem to have adopted the practice of community notes. How do you feel about that?
My hunch is it's not quite as bad as it seems, but it's still, the fact that they kicked out the fact checkers is very disconcerting to me. I mean, I know there are those who would be like, well, who's fact checking the fact checkers? Well, then who's fact checking them? You'll always have a problem. But I mean, fact checkers, they're there for a reason. They aren't propaganda people. They want to, their whole purpose is, get the truth out there, help determine facts. Although, you know what? I'm reminded of Indiana Jones. If you're interested in truth and not facts, the philosophy class is down the hall.
Ah, yes. Was that the first one?
I think
that was Last Crusade.
I'm not sure which one it was because he was in classrooms, both of them. But
right,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's The Last Crusade, but I'm not 100% certain. It's amazing how much values and stuff, come from movies these days. That could be a whole nother article right there.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, cinema inherits tradition from stage, and I think we tend to kind of like minimize the impact of movies and cinema. But
yeah, and also video games. Don't forget the video games. I mean, yeah. My company got company cars because I plagiarized the video game in my letter to the CEO.
Okay. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah.
What game did you plagiarize?
Morrowind.
Morrowind?
Yeah.
That's a heck of a game to plagiarize.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's for those of you who do not know, in Morrowind, you are the Nerevarine. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And, so you're the one who's prophesied to overthrow Dagethur, and help make the world right. But the Nerevarine is also a position. So you have to go around and you have to get all the tribes and houses to recognize you as Nerevarine and Hortator. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Before you go on and take the battle. But the first guy who believes in you from the first tribe, he tells you about need and duty. He says, where there is need, there is duty. And that's the part that I ripped off in my letter. Because I had shown like the inflation rates. I put in graphs in there about how much expenses have gone up and how much our wages have gone up. Average wages have gone up across the country. It's like, we need something more. And I was like, where there's need, there's duty.
Where there's need, there's...
And I put that to the CEO, and we got company cars out of it. So...
So it was a win.
It was a win. Yeah. It was a win.
It was a huge win. Nice.
Yeah, I plagiarized the video game. But yeah, so...
It was all for a good cause.
Yeah, totally, 100%. Yeah. You said video games never paid off.
Right. Yeah. But like, sticking with, you don't like the idea of community notes in general, or in general you're like, okay.
Well, I mean, community notes are okay.
Like, say Washington Post started doing community notes instead of...
Well, if the Washington Post started doing community notes, that would be a whole other thing, because then your Washington Post would be inviting people to correct their reporting. And journalistic standards requires that you correct your own reporting. So I might have a problem with that. I'm now to a certain extent they do. It's called editorial pages and letters to the editor.
Right.
But I would not necessarily want community notes on a Fox News article or MSNBC or a Wall Street Journal article or Washington Post.
Yeah.
These are news organizations. They have a job to do. Their job is to put out news. If they're open to the fact that they aren't putting out news, there's a problem. They need to stop calling themselves news organizations.
Fair enough. I will say, it's not exactly community notes, but like I do lurk on the Fox News pages a lot.
I used to.
I mean,
it's been a while.
Like you talk about how you balance out your biases. This is usually how I.
Is there usually like is there still? I mean, it's been a while since I've been on Fox, but every time I was on Fox, there was always a blonde white girl who was missing.
I mean, yeah, there's still pretty much
or a celebrity story was like the first or second story lead. And it was very tabloid. I thought Fox News was very tabloid.
I don't think that
as their lead stories, but I don't know if that's changed in the last 5 years or not. But
I don't think it's quite. I don't think they usually start out with that anymore. I think they tend to just kind of skip straight to the political news. But as you go and fact check,
I gotta see it.
I don't really follow Fox News on TV so much, but I follow generally Fox News, the site. One thing I have noticed... This
is a lot better than I remember it. Yeah, these are actual news stories up top.
Yeah. But like their comment section is still very active. If you go and you look at the comment section, there will be a lot of people who call out details from the article. The fact checkers might not be as active. There is, active discourse, at least in the comment section. Mm-hmm. And did you ever, from my last essay, did you ever go back and look at the disjunction fallacy?
No, I never did. I think I did like 12 hours of sound editing on that episode.
Well, right. Yeah. You were a busy guy. So the disjunction fallacy, this is actually where I find when I'm looking at both sides, like usually you'll see some headline, from a liberal media source, and you'll see another headline covering the same event from a conservative media source. And the disjunction, the fallacy that I think most people make to themselves is that one side is true and the other side isn't.
Right.
And
a lot of times there's elements of truth in both.
Exactly.
But
this is where you have to, you almost have to assume both are true and figure out, where the overlap is, because they're.
But I mean, it's at the same point in time that can actually still be dangerous in itself.
Sometimes,
because if you're always assuming that both sides are right, then you can't actually normalize bad things. So it's important to acknowledge truth to any good argument.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also important to discern what parts are true and what parts aren't. And I know this is sort of about busting echo chambers, but to be straight up honest, I mean, I don't want to say it's futile, but given the nature of us, that discernment is probably going to be done through our echo chambers if we're not careful. But I mean, it's really important, though, to understand that our filters are also from life experience.
Mm-hmm.
Life experience definitely also filters that out, too.
Yeah. Well, this is where...
But that's also where, it's how important it is to not have a homogenous group of peers, because, your life experience isn't fully true either.
Yeah.
So you need more information.
Yeah. Yeah.
It also comes down to your sooner or later you're going to have a core gut feeling that you'll go with.
Oh yeah, sure. I think and I've mentioned this before too, that if you're reading a headline and just saying to yourself, this is too much, like I can't believe that this is true, then don't. Just it's probably not true, or at least not that extreme. Too many times the headlines are meant to be sensational. They're meant to draw you in. They're
meant you to get a reaction, try to get you angry, to vote a certain way,
right?
To hate a candidate, to create an us versus them mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I used the phrase in this one, if not in this one, then in the other essay I'm working on. But you become a monster to fight a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really hard to, make sure that you have the moral high ground sometimes when you're all caught up in the passion of the moment. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Own your emotions, or emotions will own you.
Yep.
And if, and then they're manipulating you and yeah. Where's your sovereignty of thought?
Right.
Ooh, that could be another one.
Sovereignty of thought.
Yeah.
So, can you name an instance when you held an opinion or had a belief and then went to fact check it with your peers and were like, okay, maybe I can calm down a little bit? Or
usually it's a Trump story. Like right now, there's a Trump story about arresting the county judge.
Yep.
And that actually might have been the one that caused this article, come to think of it. But the more I've read about it, the more I understand how complex of a situation it is. For those of you who, I forget the name of the judge, but it was like either yesterday or the day before.
I saw it yesterday.
Yeah, I guess it was yesterday.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, judge in Wisconsin was arrested for aiding an immigrant evade ICE.
Right.
And what makes this really interesting is that the arguments that immigrants don't show up for court cases is one of the reasons why we got cracked down. So what the judge was doing by helping the immigrant evade was ensuring that her court is a safe place to show up and defend yourself. By ICE showing up, people have a right to defend themselves, and it's due process. If you're arresting somebody at the courthouse for other charges, you're interrupting that due process, and due process is compromised. Mm-hmm. So are more immigrants going to show up for court for their court cases? No, they aren't. You're actually making the problem worse.
Yeah, I think this is something that
That said.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That said, the judge did actively help an immigrant evade ICE. Yeah. So that was still a crime.
Yeah.
So, but the crime happened because of attacking due process. And I really think ICE really caused all of this. And I'm interested in seeing how the court case will be argued on this one, because
it's tough, right? Because it, kind of mixed up with this.
So the truth is like very complex.
Oh, absolutely, it is.
The truth is very complex.
Yeah.
It isn't an open and shut case, right. But the way it's reported on right-wing media and the way it's reported on left-wing media is that it is a very simple case, and whether this is about law enforcement or this is about Trump's attacking judges. It's a little bit more complex than that.
Right. Well, it's more complex, but it also isn't actually. Because when you say it actually is about law enforcement, it's about, it's about making sure. I think this kind of is going to get caught up in the idea of like sanctuary cities.
Yeah.
Right. And too often the idea of sanctuary cities get portrayed as city is just harboring, providing a safe place for criminals.
Yeah.
That's not why these cities are doing that. They're doing that because if somebody witnesses a crime, you want them to come forward and report the crime.
Right.
And stand witness and testify that they witnessed this crime.
Exactly.
And if you don't create a safe place for them to do that, then more crimes will go unreported
and
or unprosecuted.
Illegal immigrant communities, violent crime rate is lower than white Americans.
Sure. Yeah.
But
so how that problem is going to get solved, I don't know. That's going to take a smarter person than me. I take your point that there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of complexity in the news that is totally
picked him up on the street. They didn't have to try to arrest him at the courthouse.
Fair enough.
It's like, once again, it's like Waco. What were you doing trying to arrest David Koresh at his compound with all the guns and all the ammo and all the grenades and all the crap?
Right.
Why didn't you just wait for him to go to 7-Eleven and get a Coke?
Sure.
Really, you can do these things so much better. It's the only reason why ICE was there was to make a scene. It was an intentional act to instigate this. So maybe this was an intentional act to go against, to have the judge react the way the judge did. It's interesting. I don't know. I'm definitely interested in this case. This is one I would love to follow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, and to be honest, I think it's one everyone should follow.
Yeah.
Because I do think it'll set the tone for at least the next several weeks, months, or years.
Yeah.
But yeah, that aside, yes, there is a lot of detail that gets lost by one side or the other, or intentionally or not.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious your opinion. I had this discussion with Susan, your mom, about media and how it's become fractured, and how it was so much different in the past. How do you view that? How do you prefer one or the other?
You had, at least when I was growing up. So I don't remember Walter Cronkite.
Yeah.
But I do remember Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings. And so you had three gatekeepers, only three gatekeepers. for the entire nation for the most part. I mean, yeah, there's PBS, but it's PBS.
Yeah.
So as a result, with only 3 people, everybody got the same story. So I think that also is feeding into it. I know Walter Cronkite's sign-off was, and that's the way it is. I think Fox News says the same thing. They don't use the same words, but they are portraying that this is how the world is. And MSNBC is portraying that this is how the world is. You know, so I think everybody's still saying it with the same authority. It's just nobody's on the same page. And because people aren't on the same page, we are thinking that it's no longer neutral. And we're assuming that what was before was neutral because everybody was on the same page, when it still might have been skewed. But since everybody was getting information from the same sources, you couldn't really tell.
Sure.
So I don't know. I really don't know. I would have to.
I'd be curious if anybody's ever done an evaluation. I mean, because a lot of those recordings of Walter Cronkite still, there's a good number of them.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So I'm kind of curious if anybody's ever done an evaluation.
And with Watergate, I also remember Watergate was what, 1973?
Yes.
World War II ended 1945, so we're talking 28 years after.
Yep.
So, I mean, if you watch Star Trek. I think that was like what, 1969 was when that first started coming out.
I thought it was in the 70s.
I'm not sure,
yeah.
But if you watch those early episodes, like, you know, when I was a kid, once again, I took it at face value. You know, like, wow, they're going up against this omnipresent being or whatnot. But now as I'm older, I'm like, wow, most of these episodes are very anti-authoritarian. And so I think Watergate was like through the lens, you know, we just had all the politicians in power for the most part. You know, they had fought in the war. They had fought in World War II against Hitler, and they knew the dangers of authoritarianism. We don't have anybody in power now from that time who served in the war fighting against authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is just a political theory to us. It's not real.
Right.
So we don't really recognize it when it's here and we are practicing it. Yeah. So it's a completely different world because the keepers of the world have passed away. Ooh, that sounds like a good quote.
The keepers of the world have passed away.
Yeah. It's a different world because the keepers of the world have passed away. But yeah, we are at an hour 6 at this point for the interview.
Okay. So second and last question. So if there was one thing you want somebody to take away from this article, from your essay, what would it be?
I laughed because I came up with that one after the last.
No, that was totally me. It was all me. It was all my idea. Brian had nothing to do with
it. Intellectual thief.
Hey. You started it.
Yes, I did. All right. So the one thing to take away from this article, don't be afraid to question your own views and question your own views regularly. That is probably more important than questioning somebody else's views. If you take yourself always at face value and don't do any self-reflection, any self-evaluation, don't take a step outside of yourself to take a look at yourself. You know, you're just going through life in a pretty self-righteous way. And there has to be a little bit of humility to have some self-efficacy, and you have to be willing to ask yourself the tough questions in order to do this. And I encourage everybody to do this, and you'll be a better person for it.
Good job. Good way to end it.
Yeah.
So,
my question for you, where's your Capitals jersey?
I'll be honest, I've kind of grown out of it.
Oh.
But I get to ask the last question.
Yes, you do.
All right, Brian. So your article is What is Truth?
Yes.
So be honest. How often do you practice tennis to beat me?
How often do I practice tennis to beat you? Well, I mean, last week I was actually on the court hitting against the wall for a little bit, and I was also doing some serves already. So, I mean, I'm 51, you know, I got to stay in shape whether you're on the court or not.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But even with all of that practice, you only just narrowly beat me.
Hey, I only have one working eye. So, you're losing to a guy without depth perception.
Goodbye, everybody.
But anyway, everybody, please give feedback. Come to the website, theascendantproject.com. Please leave comments. Please leave likes. We are on Spotify. We are on Apple Podcasts. Please leave likes and comments there too. And if you catch us on Tumblr, leave a comment there. We love feedback and we need to know how we are doing. So, and whether this is worthwhile, I think it is, and hopefully, we're making your lives better with this. But yeah, we want feedback. Send us a joke, send us a criticism, be civil, be happy. And yeah, you guys have a great week.